Welcome here. That is good that the young people were singing that song. It was perfectly good for encouragement for each other as a group. And good to hear that we want to be strong and courageous to go on with God. God, He wants you and me to, with Him together. So today, I want to have a message about the Bible, from the beginning to the end. Sometimes it helps us to understand more about God. So that's what I want to focus on. You know the Bible, right? Then you So we have here, this is the New Testament. We have the Old Testament. The new one is, the old one is. So, why? We people, God, He made us and He knew we needed examples. We needed examples to understand. So that's why maybe I could have written about, this is a message that you could listen in, is it tonight in Greendale Church? That is from where I have been taking it, using it a little bit. Joel Reimer, he's going to preach in Greendale 2 evenings, today and tomorrow evening. That will be, he names it the big picture. I was like, I'm just trying to explain it on my way. And I'm just using a little bit about this topic. But I was looking at was like from Adam to heaven. So I tried to explain some more details you want, go to the church to Greendale. So there's one book, the Bible. So this is a little bit of the path. Before that, I want to tell you. Okay, children, I'll change this. Okay, yeah, some are English children and some are German. You don't have no story. But I was thinking about one short story that I myself experienced. I was a young boy, I don't know, maybe old, 12, 11. I don't know how old. I was sitting down and I was milking. And I asked my father, and my father, he heard it, and he said, no, and he left. And I was milking. I was young. 13, maybe 13 or 12 old. I was milking. I just wanted a ride. I just wanted a ride. So when I was finished, I went to sleep. The next day, early morning, I went slow to milk again. And my dad, he came. Hey son, I'm sorry. I decided that you can ride to go to the city. I was looking. I was excited. Yeah, that's what I wanted. I wanted a ride. So when I was finished milking, I got a ride. That is exciting. That is exciting to hear say, sorry. Yeah, you're right. Now, do you like to ride? Do you like to ride? Yeah, I know. So I want to take you for a ride today in church. Let's see if you will get it, understand it. But it's a different ride. That ride. You have to pay attention to notice the things. So there's a ride that I'll try to help you explain through the Bible. Why we have the Bible to see, oh, God, He had a plan. God, He had a plan. So first let us look to the book. The Old Testament are promises. The New Testament is to complete, fulfill. True happiness. So the Old Testament are promises that will. New Testament more real, happening, complete, finished. So already in the garden where Adam and Eve were in Eden, there was that perfect relationship. It was just perfect. It was good. It was right. But already there in Genesis, I have to written it, Genesis chapter 3, where it says that Satan will be cut and Satan will be cut off. And it happens here in this close time that Satan, he appears, and Adam and Eve, they fail, they sin. So that is the first point where God, He was opening to the people about a hope, about that this bothered man, he would be destroyed, be weak. The Old Testament is a law about a shadow. There's a shadow. They were hearing there was a shadow, but they could not see the real lumber. They could not see that. But they saw the shadow. But the real cross, later, it appeared. And they saw, oh, But at the beginning, it was more like a shadow. So let's continue to travel. Here it is from Adam and Eve, perfect in the garden, and death spread. People were dying. And also, God, He gave judgment. He wanted to show the world the wrong and the right was different. There was judgment. What was this? Noah and the flood. And God, He gave the world judgment. That bad must be destroyed, righteous must be saved. So God, He was showing it through His judgment. And then continued in the time of when Noah and the people, they were grouped, they were growing, and there were more people, and they had ideas and ideas to make a tower high. They wanted, and all the world, and God, He punished them, and He gave them different languages. All. And as we travel on, we know that Abraham, he was called to move out of the country of Ur. And he was moving. Why? He believed on Him. And Abraham, he received the promise. He was given a promise about what? A promise of the future. So here was the promised kingdom. So there was starting a promised kingdom, a kingdom the same as today. We're having a spiritual kingdom, we're warring in spirit, but here it was like a promise. It was starting off with Abraham. There was a promised land, and there is, in the future, there was a promised heaven. At this time, there was a promised land which was named Canaan. And they received a promise about future land they wanted to have. In Genesis chapter 15, verse 13, it says, "And then He said to Abram, Now certainly that your descendants will be strangers in the land that is not theirs, and they will serve them with slaves, and they will be afflicted 400 years." This was in Genesis chapter 15. God, He already was saying to the Israelites future. Why? Because Egypt, well, there'd be Egypt, and there'd be salvation, and before that there will be famine time. So we know the story of Abraham where Isaac and Jacob, he had 12 sons, and they moved to Egypt. They moved there, and they were continued to be slaves, and then there were 400 years they stayed as slaves. And that was promised. that would happen in the future. And it did happen. In Exodus chapter 19, verse 6, and you shall be to me a kingdom and a priest and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak to the children of Israel. So here we have they moved out of Egypt. They moved out. They went to the mountain where God was speaking and talking and giving them the law. And they were intense. They were sacrificing. And they had a tent where they went to worship God. They received the law to understand right and wrong. So this was a place where they received the law, where in Romans it is telling us, therefore by the deeds of the law no flesh will be justified in his sight. For by the law we understand sin. If there was no law, we would change that. But we have, and God, He was so wise in giving and starting the law to give. And then the people, oh, that is wrong. Oh, that I need to do. They obey. Oh, that is wrong. They left. They started to learn. Why? Because God had given. God had given. That helps us to understand. So now here they have Israel was a partial kingdom. It was an example. Was showing as a future kingdom. Israel was a group of people that were just like a kingdom that we want to live with in spiritual life. They really succeeded, Israel. They really were victorious. They were living righteous. They just were blooming. When the country of Canaan, and they were under Joshua, and they were winning, and they were defeating, and they were defeating, and they were defeating, and they were defeating, because they obeyed. Because they lived right. They put away, as Klaus was saying, they put away the person that had been stealing that gold, had been stealing. He was hiding it, but God, He saw it, and He gave them problems. And Israel, what should they do? Once they found out that He, and they took it and destroyed it and killed his family, this man, and was destroyed, and sin was put away. They did exactly things. Exactly. They obeyed God and they blessed Him. After Joshua, there were different judges. You know, Samuel, he was the last judge. And there was another judge just a little bit before that. There was Eli. He was a judge. He was not perfectly right. his son grew bad. So it kind of broke down. So we see that so we kind of see that God, He had a plan of Adam and Eve, perfect life. But sin broke it down. Sin broke it down. And then God, He called Abraham and He started to build up. And he went up. Until Solomon and his time, more or less, when Israel was tough, right before God, they were just growing and growing. They were righteous. They were obedient to God. But God, He wasn't finished. He had more plan. He had still a bigger plan than only growing and having a beautiful temple. And these here, when Solomon, he built that fancy temple, so nice and so gold full. You and I, we've never seen beautiful housing like Solomon was building. We haven't seen. But that was just growing. But that was the peak point. And it crumbled again. Because the judges, they kind of failed. And the early kings and the kings, they kind of, oh no, the first kings, they were righteous. There was David, there was still, and Solomon, okay, this is still that. And then the kingdom kind of broke down again. So that was kind of a kingdom that God, He wanted to show. A kingdom of united together, obedient, living right, continue. We can look back. Oh, they showed. And then after that, there was the prophets. They prophesied and prophesied about future kingdom. Future kingdom that would be happening. So there were the prophets that were warning and warning and warning. Why? Israel was going down. They rebelled and they rebelled against God. But the prophets, they gave hope, 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 hope. They wanted hope. Give them, give them. And Israel was like, discouraged. But the prophets were saying and saying, yes, will, hope, hope, will have, will go on. Just continue. But there were also 400 years that were hard. There were no prophets. The righteous prophets, they stopped, they became quiet, and then it went on where the birth of Jesus was being announced. And here was a new picture that was coming up. The anointing of Christ and the death and resurrection of Jesus that happened. So Israel kind of broke down. And there were 400 silent years. And this was kind of a breakdown, but God's plan was to continue. God's plan was to continue. And that was with Jesus. All of this history is kind of referring to the point later. I'll show you still one picture what I mean about that. It shows to Jesus. So now, this was more in the present time kingdom. More in the now time. So there was the disciples that were preaching. The church was starting, was set up, they went up, growing, and there were different special happenings with people that they believed God and they continued. So this is now more of the time that we are living with. We are living with the time of the present time, now time. So I've been going it very fast through. And after the time, there is God's throne. And God the Father and the Lamb, they will be there. And there will be the judgment of all things. And that one is heaven. There comes a time that there will be eternal, perfect, and be a new Jerusalem, and a new creation, and a new perfect presence with God. So that's what we are kind of wanting before God, to live with God. So let me just quickly show you to set it together. We started with Adam and Eve. And we added that travel of the judgment that God He gave to the flood waters. And then there was the promise that came with Abraham. And then there was Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob of the land of promise. And there was the slavery in Egypt. And there was blessing and the promise. The laws were given that we more and more would understand the way. And there was a kingdom where Israel was blooming, and they were showing a church life. And Israel was kind of going down. And then, when Israel was kind of down, there was a quiet time. God, He sent His Son, Jesus. That was the focus. That was a great plan. And the now time that we have, where there's more spiritual church, where there's more invisible. We cannot see exactly what's happening. But That's the spiritual way. And I believe it is just growing up to be more spiritual. It will not to be reversing back into earthly examples and earthly governing, and no, be more and more. It will rise up to spiritual battle, spiritual picture, spiritual way of life. And then the judgment and heaven. So that is the road that we travel through the Bible. Just short some of the things. There's so much details to talk about, but some of the points. So all of that road, that ride, shows to Jesus. The Bible, God's Word, is focused about the Son. God, He had a plan. That God, He wanted, just recently we were talking about this that I would like to say. I don't know where, I don't know. But God, He could have made angels, 10 million angels He could have made. They would all worship and praise God. But they'd be same as robots. Robots. They'd just be movement. No, God, He's interested in you and me. That your own choice. He's seeking for that. We find it in the Bible. And He had a Son that was willing, His own, willing to go to the earth, to sacrifice. And He saved us. And now God is searching for you and me to see if we will be willing to serve and praise and honor Him. Okay. That is short through the Bible. My desire is it would help you to understand God had a plan all the way from the beginning. He had a plan. He knew. He had planned. He knew He would show Israel as a kingdom, as good, as right. And it wasn't the perfect plan. He was still continuing in His plan. He wanted Jesus willing Himself so that we would copy Him and willing of our own self and follow Him, praise and worship Him. So He desires for people of choice in their own. Not that you'll be forced to worship Him, no, but willing, decide of our own decision. Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we just thank You for this day. We thank You for Your Word. We thank You for the Bible that we have. We can read it, study it, or just praise You because Thou art right. Lord, I just pray for Your guidance. We just want to honor and glorify You because Thou art right. Help us to see just as You are seen, that we will copy You. Lord, I just pray You help us to worship, bless each one to come out, and that we will be able to learn and grow with You. Lord, we just thank you for your protection and blessing. We pray in Jesus' name.
It's a beautiful picture. It's so clear that God did not plan that we would meet in problems. But God's final goal is freedom, which is up here through